If one searches on Google for the word suffering, the definition one would find is that it is the state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. Likewise, if one enters the word suffering on the PubMed, one would come across over 1.4 million scientific articles having this keyword. But, most of the articles pursue the very definition given in Google, describing only physical pain and distress. Is suffering only pain and distress? Does suffering arise only from disease, poverty and physical pain? Are we so cursed that we can never be free of suffering? Or is this a burden that we have been enduring for so long that there is simply no solution? Isn't it so surprising that even though suffering has been so widely explored by philosophers from time immemorial, but so neglected by scientists? Suffering is so universal that everyone suffers, even if they live in some of the most beautiful places on the planet. Suffering is still there, despite having satiated all physical comforts. To find a solution to end suffering has been as elusive as chasing a mirage. We often feel frustrated, depressed, or terribly sad, unable to tackle our suffering. Or often, we feel that the solution to end our suffering is just around the corner. Let me make that million, and then I will be happy forever. Let me get that dream job, all my problems will be solved. Let me marry that girl, that is all I want. If only I did not have this disease, I would have been so happy. And so we have so many proposed solutions. Yet when we get to that solution, we have more problems cropping up, leading to more suffering. So, is there at all a solution to suffering? Let us listen to what Sri Bhagavan says about suffering.
Basically, what is your life? Your life is full of suffering. Morning to night, some form of suffering. Physical suffering, psychological suffering, existential suffering, some suffering or the other. The Buddha said, no, all existence is suffering. So that is what is your life suffering. But why do you suffer? The awakened one who is transformed does not suffer. The simple reason is you are all the time resisting. You are resisting this, resisting that. Your boy gets 0 marks in the exam, you are resisting it. Your wife is not smiling at you, you are resisting it. Your boss is tough with you, you are resisting it. Something you want to happen does not happen, you are resisting it. All the time there is resistance. Resistance is suffering. But the awakened one who is transformed has no resistance. He simply flows with life. Therefore, there is no suffering for him. But you must not try this. If you are not transformed, you can't do it. That's why we tell you, when you are not awakened, do not behave like one. But when you get awakened and transformed, you will find there is no resistance at all. You simply flow with life. And there is no suffering.
Sri Bhagavan fundamentally speaks about 3 types of suffering. There include physical suffering, psychological suffering and then existential suffering. The first is physical suffering. We are all aware of this. This is suffering associated with physical pain, illness or disease. There is a lot described about this. The second is psychological suffering. A lot has been also described about this. This is suffering associated with mental anguish, anxiety, worries, and stress. We know too well about this. And then comes existential suffering. This is at the core of human existence. To understand about this suffering, we should look at the life of one person, the Buddha. He knew this only too well, right from his childhood. In fact, this was the only suffering he experienced from his childhood. Buddha, born into the most wealthiest royal family, to King Suddhodana and Queen Maya. The royal astrologer predicted that he would either become a great king or a great saint. This left his father worried, and he left no leaf unturned to ensure that he led a most comfortable and luxurious life. He had 3 summer palaces and 600 dancing girls to entertain him. He was married to the most beautiful girl. All the people who served him were strictly instructed never to speak to him about hardships or suffering. Thus, Buddha experienced no physical or psychological suffering. When this happened, the existential suffering hit him with full blast. He experienced this day and night, minute to minute, second to second. When he tried to speak about this to people around him, he got no answers. In fact, everyone around denied having anything like this, fearing his father's wrath. Siddhartha started thinking something was wrong with him. He knew he was suffering, but found no cause for this. All the luxuries around him became meaningless. He realized that he was trapped, and there was no one around to help him. Then one day, his charioteer and close friend Janna, seeing his plight, took him out of the palace secretively. Then, it happened. He saw a person who was old, a person diseased and a person dead. There was only misery all around. He realized that he was living a life of illusion. And Siddhartha saw him. A person who had peace all over his face. A person who had this radiance around him. A simple monk with a begging bowl. That was the moment of change. That was the moment of transformation. Siddhartha then renounced everything he and went to become the Buddha, or the Enlightened One. In fact, if there was anyone who really helped this transformation, was his own father. It was his father who helped him to see the existential suffering, uncovered by physical and psychological suffering. You too could experience what the Buddha experienced. It's so easy. Sit inside a silent room on a day when you have no mental worries or physical pain. Close the door and shut the window blinds. And wait. Do not do anything. Just wait. The existential suffering will first start with a sense of boredom. Once you continue to wait and watch, it would slowly pick up its pace, rising to a crescendo. If you can further wait, you will then feel it. A strange sense of suffering, a feeling that was always with you, but you ignored, running away from it. To escape to a movie, or to your work, or to meet your friend. But the suffering was always there, beckoning you, calling you, imploring you to notice it. This suffering, being at the core of your existence, a suffering, you just cannot let it go, a suffering unidentifiable from what you can as your self.
The core of your being is fear. What is deep inside yourself? It's just fear. Fear of losing this, fear of losing that, failing here, or some other worry there. The object of fear could be changing. Neanderthal man had his own reasons to be frightened of. The ancient man who was hunting had his own reasons to be afraid of. So also the medieval man. And modern man has his fear of a stock market crash or his wife running away from him. So you have all kinds of fears, but basically fear has continued throughout human history. Because as long as you exist, there would be fear. Because you are not supposed to exist. You are only an illusion. and every moment there's a struggle to survive. Unless mental formations are going on all the time, you would just cease to be there. If the brain stops creating these mental formations, you would be gone. And nature is trying to make that happen. God is trying to make that happen. But you are resisting it because you are afraid to be gone. You are scared. You think it's terrible to be gone. But what you do not realize is, when you are gone, it is the greatest joy you could ever imagine. Those who have left, you should ask them. I have around me so many people who don't exist, who are gone. They live in joy 24 hours of the day.
Could there be an explanation to this existential suffering which in scientific terms? Could we explain as to why we should suffer at all? Over the recent years, scientists have recognized large circuits within the brain called default networks. These networks kick in to take the brain into an autopilot mode. These networks are built up with learning and experience, so that a person could think of other things, while the brain can autopilot more mundane tasks, like ironing clothes, driving, writing, etc. Interestingly, 50% of our activities are controlled and performed by these default mode networks. Scientists have also studied how people perform multiple tasks at the same time. However, every time you shift your attention from one thing to another, the brain has to engage into a neurochemical switch, which uses up nutrients in the brain to perform that. So when you are doing 4 and 5 tasks together, you are not actually doing that. The brain actually cannot multitask. So, what you are actually doing is shifting rapidly from one task to another. And when you do that, there is depletion of energy, as the brain uses up its resources doing that. Scientists have also found that a person performs an average of 1,000 tasks a day. They have also shown that people on social media, or students who perform homework while traveling, and those who watch television while eating are actually depleting the brain's energy resources. So, when you take a break and do nothing, you are being your most productive self. When you walk or run, without doing anything else, that is when the default modes set it at their best and regenerate the brain. And that is when you experience your existential suffering. And as you keep on watching your thoughts, your feelings, emotions, the stories that your mind creates, you will soon realize the biggest multitask function that your brain has been performing. Right from your birth. A neurochemical switch that the brain has been performing since ages. The creation of self.
The self is a concept. You are postulating a concept when you say there is a thinker, there is a listener, there is a hearer, there is a smeller, there is a toucher. There is nobody like that at all. That is your problem. You think you are there is somebody there, but there is in fact nobody there. But try as you might, you cannot end this existence. It has to happen. Somebody must make it happen. And we have said we will make it happen. We have done that for several thousand people.
So, this is why you suffer. Your brain is creating that illusion of the self. And that is created just like film reel, moving rapidly in the projector to create the illusion of moving pictures. All the senses, touch, taste, hearing, smell, vision, combined with your mind, so rapidly switching between each other to create that illusion of self. This self knows that it does not exist. It is constantly creating stories to justify its existence. The existential suffering is call out from the brain in despair, calling out to you to notice it, because it is a product of a rapid multitasking between the senses. The brain knows this and is uncomfortable with it. If it is still not experienced, it overflows into psychological suffering, which is an higher expression of the self. If that too is not experience, it culminates into physical suffering.
Is the oneness of all living things. Though each of us may live different lives, located away from each other in space and time, we are biologically, emotionally, and spiritually one. There is only one body. What happens to the animals in the seas happens to us, men and women. What happens to the forests happens to us in our bodies. Since our bodies, like the trees, are made of the same earth, are not our bodies moving clay forms endowed with intelligence? A conscientious effort at healing the earth would manifest as the ultimate healing of our own bodies. There is only one mind. This is the mind that has flowed through our forefathers, us, and would in turn continue to live through our children and their progeny. The collective torment or fear suffered by our own brethren in one part of the world would manifest as sleeping or waking nightmares to someone elsewhere in the world. Our pleasures and pains are interminably interlinked. We are one and cannot continue to live any further in an illusion of separation. There is only one consciousness. We live in a holographic universe. Every individual awakening into oneness is automatically affecting a few thousand people, pushing them towards the only sane alternative way of experiencing reality. Our experience of reality having changed, we would go on to discovering newer ways of living and loving. We would create a better planet for the present and the future. This is our shared destiny.